fancy intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Welcome back in, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about Phlox from Star Trek Enterprise, recently getting added into Star Trek Fleet Command as one of your latest officers. And even though they are continuing on their trend of the lore just not making any sense, we are going to talk about Phlox today because I built my tribute at level 50. I was able to spend enough materials to get this bad guy, this bad boy. So let's talk about if he has any value to you. Now, obviously, some things have already happened in the beginning of this month, March 2024. So those changes have already taken place. Now we're going to look at him based on how he is now. Now, Denobulan Threat Response is his officer ability. On combat start against players is how it reads. That's a keynote for here in a little bit. But against players, Phlox reduces the opponent's critical hit chance by 45%, maxing out at 100% for 8 rounds. Now you might go, well, what PvP battle lasts 8 rounds or more in today's game? Basically the ones in the 60s. But point aside, it's essentially an Honor Guard Wharf counter. So just to remind you about Honor Guard Wharf, we'll scroll up to the way back in the day when Honor Guard Wharf came out. Rage Echidna for the first 8 rounds increases critical hit chance by X%, obviously maxing out same way that you have Phlox here. So Phlox is a natural counter, at least by design, as a PvP officer to Honor Guard Wharf. Then you have the below deck ability of Specimen Cataloging, which is increasing the efficiency of using the Borg Cube's cutting beam. Again, maxing out 100%. So if you hit this button right here, Rev, you can show the people how these things max out from tier 1 to tier 5. This information, of course, courtesy of STFC.space here for our Star Trek Fleet Command nerds and nerd folk, geeks, whatever. Here you go. So you see starting at 45% for that officer ability, maxing out at 100%. Now the immediate potential here is going to be PvP for a lot of folks. The below deck ability, I think it can have some value, but it is meh. Again, I don't think that he is really an epic officer. I'm actually very curious why we didn't get somebody else here. Now I love Phlox in Star Trek Enterprise, don't get me wrong, but the on paper uses of this just don't seem super exciting unless you're a PvP player, which we know that even then, a lot of the battles, if you are an average player current, like in the 40s or even the 30s, well, it's really the Carol crew and who attacks first. But could there be a hidden bonus to having Phlox or using Phlox? And believe it or not, there actually is. So number one, yes, you can actually make your cube more effective and efficient. That is worth noting to increase the cube's loading up efficiency. So how quickly you charge your beam. And that can have value. Then obviously when we talk about, here, let me actually throw up that PvP crew. When we talk about the PvP crew meta, well, PvP crew meta is this right here. I've got Honor Guard Wharf barely on an away team mission, but it's right here, right? That's what's become the new norm. So to counter this side of it, you would get rid of that with a Phlox officer. Now, do keep in mind that ships have a native critical hit chance. So Honor Guard Wharf is adding to that. So like my cube is at 22%, my Defiant is at 18%, and my Pylum is at 22%. So you have native crit chances already. So it's still not a perfect one-to-one countering, assuming that Phlox is the same tier as Honor Guard Wharf. There is still another way that we have found that will maybe stay, but I do want to show it to you anyway. What we have found is that he actually works against hostiles. Should he work against hostiles? That's not how he reads. To remind you exactly how the ability reads, I want to put it in right here. Combat against players. That seems to pretty much say PvP only. But I have made the argument to the dev team already that it actually provides a lot more benefit to Phlox, or provides more value to Phlox, to allow him to also work against hostiles, which he currently is, giving you a potential counter to some of these hard hostiles that are in the game. Now, I ran out with, I would say, recent crews. You see, I have Enterprise E Picard, Enterprise E Data, Phlox, and then Enterprise E Picard, Enterprise Data, and then Tucker. And Tucker is definitely better at the lower tiers. But we know the big, bang of these silent hunters, what makes them so strong is their critical loadout. So if you were to go into galaxy space right now and we were to want to investigate one of these systems and talk about the strength of the hostile, well, I'll go ahead and do that real quick using the NX-01. So I actually didn't think I would use this ability that much, and I have actually ended up using it here and there. So that allows us to look in the system without having to spend a token to go there. So I'm going to go ahead and shine a light on it. We're going to hop inside. I want to take a look at these hostiles and really kind of show you what I'm talking about when I talk about that critical. So increases critical chance by 100% for the first 4 rounds. So it's going to hit a critical guaranteed unless something reduces that, and then you have the critical damage reduction there. So what did logs say when we went and did some of this? Well, logs ended up actually showing that, yes, believe it or not, he works against these hostiles. So this is a standard run, me just hitting it with a regular crew of what a modern player might use. And then we'll have him grab one and find one real quick. Here we go. It's on me. And then, dang it, I picked the wrong one. You can tell I did a lot of log testing. So now I got to pick the right log. All right, I just need to see one log with Phlox. I'm not even editing this out. I'm going to make y'all watch all of these. Oh, there was Phlox. Okay. So what I wanted to show is if we open the battle log, 100% means that every shot should be a critical. Well, there's no critical there. There's no critical there. No critical there. We did still have a lot of criticals, but no critical and no critical. So we still had quite a bit, but this is me just running a standard run where he was by himself, 45%, and you still have a pretty high crit chance, but I clearly reduced it. If it had a native 10, was up to 100, should have been doing it every round. It was not. And you can see in other logs, same thing. You might get your triple criticals still, but you're going to have shots with no criticals. No critical, double no critical there. So we'll see if they end up keeping that. My overall thought of Phlox is that he's a solid officer, but not a great one. And the reason I say not a great one is it reminds me a lot of when Sela came out. Not sure how many players were around during the Next Generation arc. It's been a couple years now, but Sela came out and was an immediate counter to Khan, which is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a counter to Khan. Let me scroll up real quick. Where was she at? She was with the rhyme and the grip. There she is. There's nothing wrong with that. In PvP, decrease enemy crit chance by 2% per hit. But at the same time, like 2 weeks later, Honor Guard Warf had come out. And the reason that I don't believe Phlox is as good as he might read on paper is, again, tier to tier, he's still not completely removing what Honor Guard Warf can provide. And you're also at a point now where a big thing is isolytic damage. And this is not stopping the isolytic cascade of Carol Freeman. So players still might opt to run a traditional build instead of a counter build. But we'll really have to see how players adjust. Again, it's another epic officer that also would need multiple tiers to have the predicted effect or predicted usage level that'd be pretty high. Again, most people by now have a decent high Honor Guard Warf. I'd argue that mine's pretty low because I've ignored the amalgam loop for a long time. So my Honor Guard Warf actually might be lower than yours is for those watching. And I still would need a lot of Phlox to be able to counter my tier 3 Honor Guard Warf. Let me know what your Honor Guard Warf is in the comment section down below. So he's a solid officer. He's fine. Would I go after him hardcore? Not until we find out if they're going to let it stay to where he can actually work against hostiles. If they don't, then his value has less value. If they do, it has more. But either way, he is an epic officer that you kind of need to have tiered up to really worry too much about using. If you have him tier 1, he's more than likely just going to get thrown at the bottom of your cube to help with that grind if you're trying to be as efficient as possible. Hey, hope you enjoyed this video. As always, live long and plunder. Stay safe with the Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. This is Phlox. There he is. He's actually one of my favorite characters in Star Trek, period. Believe it or not. I actually loved the Phlox character, and I make an argument he's my favorite Doctor. I know, blasphemy, Beverly Crusher, whatever. But honest to God, Phlox is probably my favorite Doctor in the entire series. Sorry, Bones. Sorry, EMH. Sorry, Beverly. And Bashir, well, I didn't really like you anyway. But we will catch you on the next Star Trek Fleet Command video. Love every single one of you. Deuces, that's me. Bye-bye.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.